G'day and welcome back to Spartan Entertainment Electronics. I'm Ryan, and today we're looking at another computer build I have done. This is the first system I built from scratch, and it was a frustrating process, and quite frankly, I am glad it was built before I started this channel, as there are quite a few learning curves and a lot of swearing. The system was built for my girlfriend. We knew she needed a new computer, and she was leaning towards a new Apple product. Fortunately for me, I was able to convince her to let me build a PC instead. The selling features were in part visual customizability, part Microsoft Office, as she needs that for work, and part gaming with me once I get my quit smoking PC up and running. This video, much like my micro ATX build video, which I'll link in the description, is intended to be an overview and partial review of all the parts that went into this system. If you have watched my other PC videos, you may have noticed that I'm leaning towards AMD right now, and I think for good reason. AMD is doing smart things like including usable coolers with their CPUs, and that all of their processors come unlocked for overclocking direct from factory. Combine that with their simultaneous multi-threading performance and very competitive pricing, I think AMD is the place to be for processors right now. And as such, this build is another AMD system. I'm not biased to Team Red or Team Blue, I just want to give my customers the best bang for the buck when putting together a new system. Before we jump into the parts list, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do that now, as I really want to keep making videos and growing this channel as I am loving doing it. And don't forget to hit the bell and turn on notifications while you are there, so you will be in the know when I post a new video. The other thing I would like to address up front is that the views and opinions expressed in this video are my own and are not sponsored or endorsed by any of the manufacturers featured. With that out of the way, let's jump in, starting with the case. I didn't pick the case, although I had some guiding influence. We went with the Lian Lancool 2 mainly because of the aesthetics, and fair enough, because it does look really freaking good all lit up. Pictures and videos just don't do it justice. I may have steered the decision this way, as the case I bought for my quick smoking computer is also a Lian, and after receiving that and opening it up, I was really impressed with the build quality and considerations for being built in. And I am glad I guided in this direction, as this is an amazing case to build in. The case is an ATX mid-tower, and I picked it up for $154.72 all in. I'd like to start with the downsides, and the only thing I don't like is the tempered glass panel on the cable management side. I don't understand why it's there. Unless you plan on buying a couple of SSD drives with built-in RGB, there is no point. There is nothing to see here, and the glass calls attention to what is essentially dead space. Outside of that, I like the tempered glass panels, how they're installed, the screwless look, the light tinting. I like that the power supply compartment is separate from the rest of the case. There are no screws required to access it or shrouds to remove, and the fact that they slipped in the hard drive storage compartment down here as well was a nice touch. As a side note, the hard drive rack has been removed, as I don't believe in mechanical drives as much as is reasonably possible, but it does have space for 3 mechanical drives. On the right side of the case, there are cable covers, which made cable managing this case amazing, especially as the CPU power cable was about 2 inches shorter than I would have liked it to be. The cable covers are easy to remove, as each one is held on by one thumb screw. They do have to be removed and installed in a specific order, however. For the front of the case, we have a removable front panel and fan sled. Both are super easy to remove. The front cover is a firm pull at top and bottom, and that's really nice as there are no cables to deal with. One drawback and disappointment is that there is space for a USB-C in the front I/O, but the cable for it is sold separately as an add-on. All the input, output, and lighting is done by pin connectors, so that is really convenient. The sled has 2 screws at the top. It tips forward and lifts out. I'm not going to remove this one at the moment because I have the fans all cable managed. The fan sled has room for 3 120mm or 2 140mm fans. As a point of interest, this case did come with 3 120mm fans. Nothing fancy, but a huge cost saver nonetheless. The stock fans have done a great job so far keeping this case cool. However, they may get swapped out for something more flashy eventually. There are also 2 LED strips in the front panel of this case that are pre-installed and look fantastic. However, we did have a problem where the input-output buttons for the LED weren't connected properly. Once I found the connector and installed it properly, they have been working great and look amazing. Inside the main body of the case, there is room for 2 fans at the top of the case, as well as space in the bottom to install SSDs or fans. There is more than ample room to put a 3-fan video card in here, and with 7 full-height expansion slots, there is more than enough space for what components you may need. The only other thing I think useful to note with this case, there are add-ons. Additional RGB strips that mate right in with the front panel RGB, a video card support bracket, video card vertical mounting kits, and a USB Type-C kit for the front input-output, and hot swappable drive bays. These add-on kits are not sold directly from Lian, but they will direct you to your local retailer. I ended up grabbing an RGB strip from Mike's computer shop after searching around and seeing that there are only a couple of shops that carry these licensed add-ons in my area. I think that about does it for the case. As a summary of sorts, if you're thinking about this chassis for your next PC build, I would 10 out of 10 recommend this one. Moving on down the list, let's talk about the motherboard. I had planned to go with the B450 chipset for this build, as I know the system isn't going to be pushed hard enough to require X570 features. After looking at several boards online and trying to find one that both looked good and has integrated Wi-Fi, I went with the Gigabyte Aorus B450 Pro Wi-Fi. It's a full ATX form factor board, which I picked up for $175.17 all in. This board checked off all the requirements for what I was looking for: B450, easy on the eyes, integrated Wi-Fi, at least one M.2 slot, and gigabit internet capacity. So far, this board has handled everything thrown at it while maintaining safe and stable temperatures. The integrated Wi-Fi has proven to be reliable, even though the room this computer in has terrible Wi-Fi signal. It has two M.2 slots with heat sinks, only one of which is currently occupied. Additionally, it has 6 SATA 6 ports. It has 4 memory slots with an advertised speed capacity of up to 3200 MHz, although I have seen reports of it supporting 3600 MHz stably and memory capacity up to 64 GB in dual channel. The looks were the real selling feature. There are 4 points of RGB lighting, and they are subtle but look really sharp and make the board really stand out and pop without calling too much attention. After getting things installed, I found the BIOS easy to navigate for a novice builder. I had my local retailer flash the BIOS, as I don't have a 2nd gen CPU to install and flash it. I ended up having to set a custom fan curve for the CPU cooler in the BIOS. Found this pretty straightforward to do with the Smart Fan system. In addition, and I now wish all manufacturers did this, the Gigabyte board came with what they called a G-Connect hub. And essentially, it is a spot to connect your front input-output to and then plug the hub into the board. It essentially standardizes the front I/O plug and eliminates the need to fight with all those tiny little itty-bitty cables. All in all, I am really happy with building on this board and how it looks, and I would definitely recommend it. I have recommended it. Continuing on with parts mounted to the motherboard, for the CPU, I went with the AMD Ryzen 5 3600X. It is a 6-core, 12-thread processor with a base clock of 3.8 GHz, which I picked up for $320.40 all in. As with all 3rd gen Ryzen, it comes unlocked and ready to overclock. It also comes with the Wraith Spire cooler, which after setting a custom fan curve has been running quite well. Under sustained load, the fan does become a little noisier than ultimately desired. However, doing 1080p gaming, it has kept the CPU under 70 degrees Celsius comfortably. I have considered putting on an aftermarket cooler, but the system isn't pushed hard enough often enough to justify it. For memory, I went with the Patriot Viper RGB. It's a DDR4 3200 MHz 16 GB kit. Has a white heat spreader and LED RGB strip across the top of the modules. It was purchased for $124.43 all in. It is compatible and has been working well with the Gigabyte RGB Fusion 2.0 and looks pretty sharp. After it was popped onto the board and the XMP set up in the BIOS, it has been running perfectly fine. It is also on the qualified vendor list for this board, so that was a key factor in purchasing this kit. It is also white to kind of match with the case. Always check the QVL for your motherboard before buying RAM. It could save you a headache down the road. For storage, I only have one drive in this system, and that is a Western Digital SN750 M.2 NVMe 1TB stick, picked up for $220.49 all in. I wanted to keep the cables down and leave room for future expansion, as this system may eventually be used for photo editing, so the M.2 made sense. Originally, I had a 250GB M.2 and a 1TB SSD, but this drive ended up being on sale for the same combined price of the other 2 drives. I was also advised by my local retailer that the Kingston A400 SSDs are garbage and to avoid them like the plague. And since hearing that, I have looked into them and am finding a plethora of information of people having issues, so I think I dodged a bullet there. The last component plugged directly into the motherboard is the video card. For that, I went with the MSI Radeon RX580 Armour X 8GB, which I picked up at my local retailer for $236.24. The card is pretty basic, there is no RGB, the chill plate and body are black with white accents, and the same goes for the fans. As far as performance, it has been running games stably at 1080p over 60 frames. However, under load, the card quickly heats up and the fans ramp to 100% around 68 degrees Celsius. Once the fans ramp up, the card becomes quite noisy quite quickly. It's an older card that we got for a reasonable price, so I'm not going to pick on it too hard for fan noise. If I had a 2080 Ti be this loud though, I would be complaining about the card quite profusely. Because of the GPU fan noise and the CPU cooler ramped up to about 3000 RPM at 70 degrees, the system is a little loud. I have the Radeon RX 5500 XT for my micro ATX system, so I'll see how that card compares before recommending this card, as there's less than $100 Canadian price difference between the two cards. The final piece to this puzzle is the heart of it all, the power supply. For that, we went with the Corsair TXM 750. It is an 80 plus gold semi-modular unit. It's nice looking with a fan off mode when the power consumption is lower at idle, helping to keep the noise of this system down just a little bit. The cables are clearly marked, which is nice, and they have some trainability. They are fairly soft cables though, so they don't hold shape super well. I asked my girlfriend for her thoughts on this build, as it is the system she is using daily for work and some light gaming. Her comments were, once the fan thing was figured out, the system became a lot quieter. That was in reference to the CPU fan. She really likes how quickly the system turns on, the color settings for RGB, the additional RGB strip we bought, and how clean and sleek it looks. And she knows it may seem silly and frivolous, but she just loves how pretty it looks. The mouse is okay, a bit big for her. She does wish more manufacturers made smaller mice. Also, there needs to be ergonomic split keyboards with RGB, because she should be able to type safely and look good doing it. An additional comment was added indicating that although some of the thoughts revolve around how it looks, that is a big factor, as if it was just a big black box with no lighting, it would be less enticing to spend time on it and no desire to show off the new computer. That wraps up the base build. It has Windows 10 Home for the operating system. For peripherals, after all the RGB and aesthetics considerations with this system, the Microsoft Ergonomic 4000 keyboard was selected, completely destroying the white and RGB vibe of the system. At least the Corsair M55 mouse helps to make up this insult to an otherwise beautiful system. For the monitor, I went with a Samsung 27-inch 1080p 60Hz that was on year-end model clear-out sale, so I picked it up for a really good price. All said and done, this build came in at $1,886.59 Canadian, including all taxes and shipping charges, as well as all the peripherals and monitor. That does it for this build. Be sure to check out my other PC videos, including my 4K for 4K. That one's mostly unboxing videos for now until all the parts come in and I am ready to put them together. I am also working on game and movie reviews as often as I can. If you're in the market for a new computer, please send me an email at SpartanEnE@gmail.com. I would love to chat with you about your budget and needs for your next computer, and if it is needed, I will get a quote together for a system for you. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this build or what you might have done differently with it to fit into the $1,500 budget for this system. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and share this video if you found it interesting or useful. And please be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll get the memo when I post a new video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.